and he's promised to use the military as enforcement in the past.
We must use any of our resources needed to stop the invasion, including moving thousands of troops currently stationed overseas.
Now, as Mr. Trump nods to his immigration plans and prepares for office, he's also facing a fight in Washington on some of the picks for his new administration. Standing ovation after taking a different kind of fight at a UFC match with allies this weekend. The spotlight now on his choice to lead the Pentagon, former Fox News anchor Pete Hegseth. His attorney confirms to NBC News Hegseth paid a settlement to a woman last year after she previously accused him of sexual assault in 2017. But the attorney says Hegseth maintains his innocence and that the encounter was consensual.
You think that this matter could sink Pete Hegseth's confirmation?
It could. We'll figure out if he can get confirmed. And I do think that Pete's a good pick for this position.
Mr. Trump has told advisors he plans to stand by Hegseth after a recent conversation with his nominee, according to the New York Times, citing two people briefed on the discussion. Also facing new backlash, the president-elect's choice of now former Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz to lead the Department of Justice, with multiple sources telling NBC News he faces a very difficult path to confirmation. Gaetz resigned his seat last week, ending a House Ethics Committee investigation into whether he engaged in sexual misconduct and illicit drug use, allegations he denies. While some in both parties want the committee to release its report, House Speaker Mike Johnson disagrees, saying Gaetz is now a private citizen.
I think that would be a Pandora's box.
Mr. Trump has yet to name another key cabinet pick, and that is the Treasury Secretary, a position that could have obviously an impact on that pledge to implement more tariffs that Mr. Trump has promised. Back to you.
All right, Hallie, thank you. Well, in a major U-turn with just 2 months left in August, President Biden has approved the use of U.S.-supplied long-range missiles by Ukraine to strike inside of Russia. Until now, the Biden administration had resisted the move over fears it could escalate the war further. The decision came as Russia carried out a large missile and drone attack on Ukraine's power grid on Sunday. NBC News Chief International Correspondent Keir Simmons has more here. Hey, Keir, good morning.
Good morning to you. The Kremlin this morning describing the move by the Biden administration that's being reported this morning as pouring oil on the fire. The NBC News team in Moscow asking a question of the Kremlin spokesman, and he responded saying that if this is true, it will represent a new kind of U.S. involvement in Ukraine.
They were fighting yet more fires overnight, counting 11 dead, including 2 children, in just one Ukrainian city, Sumy, after a weekend that saw the largest Russian airstrike in almost 3 months, cutting off power and water to families and homes. Russia says its targets were part of the Ukrainian war effort, its rockets and drones doing the talking. As President Biden agreed to allow Ukraine to use Western long-range weapons, according to 2 U.S. officials. It's a policy shift from the United States that Ukraine had been pushing for, the Biden administration resisting until now. The decision, European officials say, was driven by the arrival of North Korean troops in Russia and by a determination to help Ukraine hold on to territory ahead of expected negotiations. President Zelensky declaring the missiles will speak for themselves. But President Putin has warned that precision rockets, including US attackers, would mean NATO countries directly involved in the conflict. And overnight, President Trump's son, Donald Trump Jr., writing on X, the military-industrial complex seems to want to make sure they get World War III going before my father has a chance to create peace and save lives. President-elect Trump has previously said he would end the war in Ukraine in 24 hours and pushed for an end to the fighting.
I will end the war in Ukraine.
Tomorrow will mark 1,000 days of the Ukraine war. The G7 reiterating over the weekend, Russia remains the sole obstacle to a just and lasting peace.
And multiple European diplomats and officials tell NBC News that compromise does now appear inevitable. And President Zelensky himself saying the war is likely to end sooner under President-elect Trump. But some of the events of this weekend suggest any negotiations will be fraught and tough and bitter. So
Keir, thank you. Let's stay on this now with former U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine and the Director of the Atlantic Council's Eurasia Center, John Herbst. Good morning. Thank you. Always great to have you with us. So let's talk about the timing of this this year. Why do you think President Biden has greenlit Ukraine using these U.S.-provided weapons to strike inside Russia now? And then, of course, tell us what type of impact you think this could have on the shape of the war.
Okay, thank you for having me. Look, this is part of the Biden pattern we've seen since the big invasion by Russia began. They've been intimidated regularly by Putin's nuclear threats, and they have on multiple occasions failed to provide in a timely way the weapons Ukraine has asked for. That goes back to MiG-29s held by our allies, it goes back to HIMARS, it goes back to tanks, F-16s. And then finally they get comfortable and agree to send them. And I'm glad to see this decision, but it's way too late. It should have been taken well over a year ago, more than that. But I believe that it was driven by the North Korean intervention in this war. Of course, that intervention is now 5 or 6 weeks old. This should have been done. That was the reason back when it started. Because by delaying this decision, they've allowed the Russians to move much of their military infrastructure, their arms depots, out of the range of those missiles, which only fly 108 miles. They're not truly long-range strikes. But this could have a positive impact on the fight in the Russian territory, of course, where the Ukrainians have a stronghold. That's where the Russians are mounting a large offensive to take it back. And this could make that much harder. And that's important because when the negotiations begin, Ukraine has to have some leverage, and holding Russian territory is real leverage.
You mentioned that you would have liked to have seen this sooner. It seems the reason right that hasn't happened is because concern of the Russian reaction. And at this point, the Kremlin is saying that President Biden is adding oil to the fire with this decision, saying it will lead to that rise in tensions. Is that a concern?
Look, you always have to be concerned about the possibility of escalation, especially when you're dealing with a nuclear power like Russia. But you can't let that paralyze you. And in previous confrontations between the United States and the Soviet Union, which was a stronger military power than Putin's Russia, we did not let that deter us from taking the steps we needed. And Biden sadly has let that happen, although then eventually makes a decision. If we had armed Ukraine properly 2 years ago, with attackers, which we only sent in the beginning of this year, with Abrams tanks, with F-16s, Ukraine's offensive in 2023 would have been much more successful than it was. It's Russia that escalates at every turn, and by bluster tries to prevent us from responding. And we have sadly played that role, that weaker role, over the past several years.
Ambassador, if we could look forward for a moment, I want to ask you something that Keir had just mentioned right before we brought you in, which was this potential of some type of negotiated settlement once President-elect Trump becomes President Trump in January. How would something like that work? Do you see that as a possibility? And just explain what you think the Trump factor does here once he takes office in January.
I think that Trump will certainly proceed with negotiations. We don't know the exact elements, of course. He's not even president yet. But some of the tendencies seem to be Ukraine will have to give up some land. There will be a demilitarized zone, perhaps with European troops in between. The U.S. will arm Ukraine so that Russia cannot commit aggression in the future, not renew its invasion. These seem to be the main elements. They have largely been rejected by the Russians. President Zelensky in Ukraine has expressed concern, but seems to recognize the territorial compromise may be necessary. But keep in mind, if we proceed in this road, and I can see merit in it, it's critical that we keep Ukraine strong. And I suspect that Trump and his national security team will want to do that. Because if they push a settlement on Ukraine, and Putin violates that settlement, the Trump administration will be responsible for major U.S. geopolitical defeat that would make Biden's disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan seem a relatively small change. And I think Trump and his national security team, as named, understands that. Although it's not clear that everyone in Trump world understands it.
Ambassador John Ernst, we always appreciate your analysis and context. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure, thank you.
Back here at home in the U.S., of course, the holiday season it's upon us, and this morning AAA is releasing its yearly Thanksgiving travel forecast, and it looks like it's going to be another record-breaking year. Because AAA expects Look at this number on your screen. Nearly 80 million people will travel at least 50 miles from their homes. That's by plane, by car, by cruise ship. In case you were wondering, that is almost 2 million more than their prediction for last year. NBC News senior business correspondent Christine Romans is here on set to help us understand exactly how tough it's going to be to get to that Thanksgiving table. Good morning.
Good morning, over the river and through the woods. Everyone's going. 80 million people. We've never seen a number like that.
Yeah, so this is record-breaking, right?
It is. These are record numbers of people who will be traveling over the holiday. And it's so interesting because when you look at the cruise numbers, for example, those are up really big as well. People are spending a lot of money to, I don't know if it's FOMO or YOLO or whatever you want to call it, but nobody wants to miss out, especially in these years after COVID. So I thought maybe these numbers would start to moderate a little bit, but they just haven't. They're even raising plane tickets are 3% more expensive, doesn't matter. People are still buying them. Cruise ships are, they're winding back some of their discounts because they have such great demand. They don't need to do last minute discounts to fill their cabins. So people are on the move, on the road.
I didn't know Thanksgiving was such a cruise time.
It is now. It is.
It's a good little chunk of
Especially
days
as a
off.
family. Imagine if you go with your sister or your parents.
Right.
Maybe that's a kind of a good way to do a family get together without having to cook a turkey.
Yeah, and apparently you can even do a Hallmark cruise that we'll talk about later this hour. For people who are driving,
Yeah.
that's me, what is that going to look like in terms of traffic and timing on the roads and gas prices? Is this painful?
So now AAA is even like going a little bit long. You know, because of hybrid work schedules, people are kind of stretching these vacations out or stretching these holidays out. So think Tuesday to Tuesday or Tuesday to Monday is kind of the week there. So AAA says what you want to do in terms of driving is Tuesday and Wednesday before Thanksgiving are going to be the biggest driving days. The best day to drive is early on Thanksgiving morning, actually, if you're trying to get someplace. If you're within, 50 or 100 miles, that might be good. And then coming back on Sunday, if you're coming back on Sunday for Thanksgiving, again, super early in the morning, that's where you want to leave. A lot of people will be on the road Monday after Thanksgiving.
Oh gosh, yes, like kind of extended.
Yeah.
Are you a traveler or a hoster?
I'm going to be a hoster.
You're a hoster.
I'm a
So
hoster.
here to stay put.
I do get to stay.
Christine Romans, thank you so much. Well, this morning, it seems firefighters are finally getting the upper hand on one of the biggest of those brush fires that continues to spread across the Northeast. An ongoing drought combined with windy conditions have made it hard to contain those fires, leading to red flag warnings impacting millions of people. With NBC News correspondent Emily Aketa in Greenwood Lake, New York with the latest. Emily, I could smell these fires here in New York City all weekend. Good morning. What's the latest?
Savannah, good morning to you. Well, this part of New York remains under a state of emergency. Schools in the area are closed again today, and firefighting crews are sticking close to neighborhoods in an effort to protect some of the homes threatened by fires. You might be able to make out on the edge of the lake. Those are some of the homes that were evacuated over the weekend after we saw these strong, powerful wind gusts push flames even past containment lines.
This morning, firefighters gaining ground on the Jennings Creek fire, now nearly 90% contained in both New York and New Jersey. The National Weather Service warning dry, windy conditions across the Northeast remain a threat to spread the flames and ignite new fires.
We have another wind event coming, so obviously there's concern there.
Officials say the wildfire is the largest in New York in 16 years, with fire crews from as far as Montana and Colorado on the ground and in the air working to manage it. Helicopters with New York's National Guard dropping more than 50,000 gallons of water.
It's very rocky, very steep, makes it very difficult for us to get hand crews in, much less even trying to get engines or UTVs into the last spots.
Over the weekend, flames jumping containment lines because of the wind, prompting voluntary evacuation still in effect that impacted over 160 homes in the neighboring town of Warwick. More than half of the Northeast remains under moderate drought, with red flag warnings on Saturday impacting over 40 million people. Crews managing localized brush fires in other states like Massachusetts and Connecticut. Now this morning, with the fire threat far from gone, officials hope rain in the near forecast will help them get the job done.
We're trying to control and contain Mother Nature.
And just south of here, New York City's fire commissioner just announcing its first ever brush fire task force after the FDNY responded to a record 271 brush fires across the city in just a 2-week period. The good news, there is about a half an inch of rain forecasted for later this week. It certainly welcomes help for this dry landscape and also strange firefighting crews.
Absolutely. Emily, stay safe. Thank you. Now let's bring in NBC News meteorologist Michelle Grossman for a look at what's in store in the week ahead. Hey, Michelle, good morning.
Hi there, Savannah. As Emily mentioned, we do have rain in the forecast in the Northeast. That should be later Wednesday into Thursday. Could linger into Friday and the early part of Saturday. So that is better news. But we are still dry today. In autumn, Jen, normally we'd be like cheering for this, but we're so used to this warm weather, the dry weather. We need that rain, and it is really warm still. It's windy, and that's fueling the fire risk once again today. So we do have sunshine from New England all the way down to the southeast. We have above average temperatures. It's going to be near 70 degrees in D.C. The middle of the country, this is where all the activity is. Also the west. We have a potent cold front moving through the middle of the country. That's bringing the chance for some strong to severe storms. We've been watching them all morning long, and they will continue as we head throughout this Monday. And that rain stretches all the way to the upper Midwest. Notice we have those bright colors. That's where we're anticipating some heavy rainfall. This could lead to flooding as well. Mountain snow in the west. We remain very unsettled in the west. We have a storm system today, a cold front, and then by Wednesday, an atmospheric river, a bigger storm system moves on shore. So more mountain snow, lower elevation rain there. Could see some snow in the northern plains, the upper Midwest, and then there are the showers that we were talking about later on Wednesday into Thursday for parts of the Northeast, the Ohio Valley. You'll get them a little bit earlier. Mid-Atlantic could see some showers too. We could see some showers too down in parts of Florida. Could see some storms there as well. Now, as we head towards Friday, we're looking at a November chill. We're back to more normal temperatures. We're going to see some wet weather, so it's going to feel a little bit more like November in the Northeast, and that rain and wind continues out west.
Oh, all right. Well, I like some of those words in there. Autumn gem.
Yes, I know. It is. Right.
Okay, sure. Much more to come on this hour of Morning News Now, including a troubling new crime trend targeting some top pro athletes while they are out on the road playing games. First up this break, though, a new wave of racist and offensive text messages were being blasted out to people across the country. Well, now the FBI is getting involved. We'll bring you the Bureau's response up next.
Hey, what's up, you? Dad, feel free. What I kind of messed up. My only pressure part. Just throw it in the wash. This bottle says I need creature. That's your problem. That stuff has way more water. Tide moves better. Okay, so I don't need to use a cold cap for large loads? Oh, a little bit of time goes a long way. So you can save money too. Nice. More money for nights at the library. Right.
For a better clean with less, it's got to be Tide.
Everyone said I should go to a traditional university, but I chose WGU. Their online RN to BSN degree is perfect for working nurses like me. I'm able to use my experience to move through courses faster, and the study time I put in between shifts actually pays off at work. WGU's CCNE accredited degrees are built by healthcare leaders, so I know I'll be graduating from a top-notch BSN program that employers respect. Learn more at wgu.edu.
Swiffer Duster atrapa 4 veces más polvo para una limpieza que hasta mamá aprueba. ¡Qué alcance! Y llega a esos lugares sin dificultad.
Facilísimo. Yo le enseñé eso.
Y con Swiffer Super Dry puedes atrapar y retener 2 veces más suciedad, polvo y cabello.
¡Súper!
Las escobas solo empujan todo. Swiffer atrapa la suciedad y hasta el cabello. Swiffer.
Excelente.
La mamá de todas las limpiezas. O te encanta te devuelve tu dinero.
This is a hot flash. This is a hot flash. But this is a not flash. For moderate to severe vasomotor symptoms due to menopause, Veoza is the first and only prescription treatment that directly blocks the source of hot flashes and night sweats. With 100% hormone-free Veoza, you can have fewer hot flashes and more not flashes. Veoza reduces the number and severity of hot flashes day and night. Don't use Veoza if you have cirrhosis, severe kidney problems, kidney failure, or take CYP1A2 inhibitors. Increased liver blood test values and liver problems may occur. Your doctor will do blood tests before and during treatment. Stop Veoza and call your doctor if you have symptoms of liver problems such as feeling more tired than usual, nausea, vomiting, itching, yellow with the eyes or skin, pale stool, dark urine, or stomach pain. Ask your doctor about hormone-free Veoza and enjoy more not flashes. You can save on Veoza. Visit saveonveoza.com to learn more.
Yeah.
But can you fast track me into a home barista?
All you need in 3 easy steps to make you just like me. They call it the fast track barista. You will need a machine that can perform as good as a cafe machine like mine. Then, you need the same specialty beans cafes use to put you adore.
They make videos specific to every Drego machine.
Get the machine, beans, and skills you need with the fast track barista pack, humble and safe.
Welcome back. The FBI is investigating offensive text messages being sent to people in the Latino and LGBTQ communities. According to the agency, some people have reported receiving texts saying they were, quote, selected for deportation, or telling them to report to re-education camps. These messages come after those racist texts African Americans were receiving that we told you about last week. Well, joining us now for more on this is NBC News Justice and Intelligence correspondent Ken Delaney. And Ken, good morning. So, I mean, these messages, they started appearing in the last couple weeks, right after the election. What exactly are they saying? Tell us more details about what is in these text messages and who's been receiving them.
Yeah, good morning, Savannah. Look, a cross-section of people. The latest is, as you just said, a new group of people, the Latino and Hispanic community and the LGBT community. People in those communities have been receiving some of these vile and offensive texts, as you said, ordering them to report to re-education camps or saying they were ready to be deported, that kind of thing. And that comes after hundreds and hundreds of African Americans received texts, again, vile and offensive messages saying that they've been, they're ordered to report to plantations, things like that. The FBI is involved, is investigating, local officials are investigating, so far no leads on who's sending these texts.
Ken, so how is the FBI responding here to the reports about these text messages?
Well, they're taking it very seriously. They're also saying though that there's no evidence that there are any violent threats associated with this or any violent planning, but they are trying to track down now who is sending these texts. They are working with state and local officials, and they are bringing their technological capability to bear. So
obviously, Ken, this has just got to be so disturbing for somebody to receive these messages. I imagine, especially for people who haven't been hearing this is going on, they get a text message that says something awful like that. What are you hearing from people about how it's impacting them?
yeah, it's really hurtful. It's just an example of pure hate speech directed at vulnerable groups. Take a listen to one person. I think we have some sound from somebody who received one of these texts.